The alarm reaches the alphas while the sky is still heavy with night, and the city feels half asleep, yet something in the signal carries weight that pulls them forward without hesitation. They move through corridors and service roads with purpose, boots striking concrete, breaths steady, minds focused on what waits ahead. The transport facility rises from the dark like a sealed vault, lights blinking in slow warning patterns. Doors that should have opened earlier remain shut, and the air smells of metal, oil, and neglect. The alphas exchange looks, trained faces calm, yet eyes sharp, sensing that time has already been lost. They reach the outer gate where silence presses in thick and unnatural. No cries, no movement, no sound except the hum of failing systems. One alpha places a hand on the door, feeling cold steel beneath the glove, and signals for entry. Override. As the mechanisms grind, awake memories surface of drills and simulations that never quite captured this feeling. The quiet, before discovery, the moment when hope and dread exist together. Each step closer to the compartment stretches long, as if the distance itself resists them. The lead alpha orders a slow approach, voices low, not from fear but respect for what might be found. The corridor narrows, walls scarred by age and impact marks, telling a story of panic and force. The air grows warmer, trapped and stale. A faint sound reaches them, then not loud enough to be certain. At first it seems imagined, but it comes again, shallow, uneven breathing. The alphas quicken their pace now, urgency sharpening every movement. At the sealed compartment door, the control panel flickers weakly. Emergency lights cast long shadows across the floor. The alphas position themselves, ready for anything yet unprepared for everything. When the door finally opens, it does so reluctantly, revealing darkness within. The smell hits first, human sweat, fear, and something heavier. The light spills inside and shapes begin to form, small figures, close together, unmoving at first glance. Then one chest rises, then another, proof of life, fragile and real. The alpha step forward, hearts pounding as training gives way to instinct, knowing this moment will stay with them long after the night ends. Light reaches the cubs slowly, as if even it hesitates to disturb them. Small bodies pressed together for warmth, for courage, for survival. Eyes reflect the glow, wide and glassy, unsure whether what they see is real. One cub shifts first, a small movement of fingers curling into fabric. Another breath escapes, uneven but present, and the sound cuts through the alpha, sharper than any alarm. They lower themselves instinctively, making their forms less threatening, their voices gentle, though their chests burn with urgency. The cubs have marks on their skin, bruises, scrapes, dirt smeared from long hours on the floor. Their lips are dry and cracked, yet when spoken to their heads, turn tracking sound, clinging to it like a lifeline. Whispered question passes between them, asking if it is over, asking if they can move, asking if they are safe. The alphas answer with nods and slow promises, staying close enough to be seen but not touched yet. One cub points shakily toward the back of the compartment, toward a darker space beyond the reach of the emergency lights. The gesture is weak but deliberate, and every alpha understands its meaning before it is explained. They follow the direction carefully, scanning for threats, though none remain except what time has already taken. Their steps soften as the floor changes, texture smeared with dried signs of struggle and effort. The cubs watch every movement, holding their breath as if afraid sound itself might undo the rescue. When one alpha offers water, small hands reach out, then hesitate before accepting. Trust learned the hard way. As the cubs drink, they speak in fragments, about waiting, about counting breaths, about a voice that told them stories to keep them awake, to keep them alive. The alphas exchange looks, realizing that survival did not happen by chance. Something else is here, something unseen yet felt, and the weight of it settles as they move deeper into the compartment. Knowing the story is only beginning, the alphas move deeper into the compartment, guided by instinct and by the quiet understanding that something waits ahead. The cubs remain behind, watched by medics, as the space narrows and the air grows. Heavier shadows stretch along the walls, shaped by flickering lights that struggle to stay awake. Every step reveals signs of effort, hands pressed against metal, scuff marks where someone braced themselves again and again. Refusing to fall, your body comes into view slowly, as if the darkness itself resists revealing the truth. She lies between the cubs and the sealed rear hatch, positioned with intention, not accident. Her arms rest wide, one hand curled as though it once held another one. Alpha kneels first, checking for breath, though the stillness already answers. The skin is cold, the face peaceful in a way that speaks of exhaustion rather than fear. They notice details that tell the story without words: torn sleeves, scraped knuckles, dried blood along the forearm marks, left by impact and time. A small device rests near her hand, its screen dark now but once a source of sound and comfort. The alphas stand silently absorbing what this means. Training teaches control, but nothing prepares them for this kind of choice. The decision to stay when escape was possible. The medic arrives, confirming what they already know, yet treating her with the same care as the living. A blanket is drawn over her shoulders, not to hide her, but to honor her behind them. The cub's voices drift faintly, calling, asking if she is waking, asking if she can come to. The question lands, heavier than any weight. One alpha turns away, unable to meet the silence. Another stays, watching her face, memorizing it, because this is a story that must be carried forward in this space between rescue and loss. The alphas understand that leadership is not only about strength, it is about recognizing sacrifice and ensuring it is never forgotten. The cubs speak her name softly, as if volume alone could break what has already happened there. Voices carry through the compartment, thin but steady, shaped by long hours of listening to her calm tone. The alphas listen as the cubs begin to explain, not all at once, but in pieces that fit together. Slowly, they talk about the lights going out, about the door refusing to open, about the cold that crept in after the noise stopped. They say she gathered them closed when fear turned loud. She counted breaths with them, pressing their hands to her chest so they could feel life continuing. She told them stories, not heroic ones, but simple moments about mornings and shared meals, and the promise that someone would come. When the cubs cried, she did not ask them to be brave. She told them it was allowed. She said staying together mattered more than being quiet. As hours passed, her voice weakened but never left. She gave them her jacket, her water, and her place near the door. She told them to sleep in turns and shook them awake when silence grew dangerous. One cub admits she could have gone when the first alarm failed. She chose not to. She said someone had to stay awake. The alphas feel the truth settled deep, not as tragedy alone but as intention. Every action was a decision made for others. A medic wipes their eyes unnoticed while adjusting equipment. Another alpha lowers their head in respect. The cubs finish speaking and wait, watching the adults, carefully learning how the world responds to loss. In that pause, the alphas understand that this story will not fade. It will follow them into policy, into memory, into every choice where staying behind might save someone else. The medics begin their work with quiet precision, lifting the cubs gently, one by one, checking pulses, warming hands, offering sips of water that feel like relief and disbelief mixed together. The cubs resist at first, not from fear but from loyalty. Their eyes keep returning to the still form on the floor, as if waiting for permission to leave. They ask again if she will wake, if she is only sleeping. The alphas answer honestly but softly, saying she made sure they could breathe long enough for help to arrive, saying she kept her promise. One cub nods slowly, accepting words that hurt but make sense. Another curls into an alpha shoulder, finally, allowing tears that were held back to survive. As they are wrapped in thermal blankets, their shaking eases and their breathing deepens, life asserting itself again. The compartment feels different now, less heavy but no less sacred. The medics cover the savior, fully leaving her hands, visible as a sign of respect, as senior alpha records the scene, not for reports but for memory, for accountability, for truth. They know questions will come later about systems and delays, but this moment belongs to her and to the cubs, who lived because she stayed. As the last cub is carried toward the exit, the alphas remain behind for a beat longer, standing guard over the quiet understanding that some rescues begin with loss and end with responsibility. Outside the compartment, the night air hits like a wave, carrying the scent of cold metal and smoke from distant fires. The cubs cling to blankets and to each other, their small hands grasping warmth they barely remember but instinctually seek. Their eyes are wide still, but trust has begun to form where fear once lived. The alphas move with careful precision, guiding them past cables and broken panels, ensuring every step is safe. They talk softly, offering reassurance about what will happen next, where families wait and who will care for them, while keeping their voices low, not to startle, not to remind them too quickly of the darkness they left behind. Behind them, the compartment remains sealed, a monument of struggle and courage. Every mark on the walls, every scratch on the floor tells a story that no one can rewrite. No one dares speak too loudly about the still figure wrapped in blankets, because the weight of her choice lingers heavier than words could ever carry. The cubs ask questions in broken sentences about her, about the waiting, about why she did not leave. The alphas answer with care, choosing honesty over comfort, explaining that bravery sometimes means staying when escape is possible. and that love is often louder in silence than in sound. News crews and emergency lights crowd the perimeter, but the alpha shield the cubs, their presence forming a barrier between innocence and spectacle. They offer water, blankets, small snacks, letting each cub choose when to move, when to speak, when to rest. One cub reaches back instinctively, as if to check for the presence of the one who saved them, and the alphas gently redirect attention forward, guiding them toward warmth and safety they know memories will carry her image into. Every night and every day that follows, the medics speak quietly about injuries, minor and major, but none that break the fragile spirits held together by her sacrifice. They whisper about heat packs and bandages, and the need to document every detail. For those who will follow after, the alphas take turns walking beside the cubs, offering strength in silence. They exchange glances that speak more than words about the cost of duty, the weight of responsibility, and the quiet honor of witnessing survival, born from selfless courage. When the last cub is finally handed to waiting caregivers, the alphas pause at the threshold, watching small shoulders relax, watching breaths even out, and understanding that life continues because one refused to abandon the other. The night hums around them, lights flicker, shadows move, and yet the memory of the Savior remains, a steady presence anchoring every heartbeat, every whispered promise that life is always worth the fight. The cubs huddle together in the warmth of temporary shelter, blankets wrapped tight around trembling bodies. They look around with eyes that have seen too much, yet begin to register safety. For the first time in hours, they ask again about her voice, the one that guided them through the dark, the one that told stories when fear was loud. They speak in small fragments, names of animals, songs shared, and moments that kept them awake and alive. The alphas listened silently, letting the cubs speak, letting memory preserve what courage created outside the makeshift sanctuary. The world begins to stir. News spreads quickly about the incident, but no headline can carry the weight of what happened inside. The alpha stands slightly apart, watching the cubs adjusting to movement, to light, to the knowledge that someone cared enough to stay. One cub looks toward the compartment, instinctively reaching, as if she might still be there. A medic kneels beside them, explaining gently that she gave everything to keep them breathing, and that her sacrifice will always be remembered. The alphas exchange quiet glances, their faces hard, but their eyes soft with understanding. They know this moment will follow them through every mission. Every choice, every action taken now carries the shadow of her courage. The cubs begin to relax slowly, voices softening. Laughter, timid but present, curiosity returning in small movements. The alphas allow them space to grow into life again while keeping watch for unseen dangers. As families arrive, hugs and tears shared, the memory of the one who stayed remains alive in every glance, every touch, every small hand reaching instinctively toward absence and holding on to the presence that made survival possible. In the midst of rescue, grief and relief exist side by side, and the alphas carry both, knowing that real heroism is not loud or celebrated but quiet and eternal, and it lives on in those who were saved. The investigation begins slowly, methodically, examining every detail of the transport compartment, the alarms, the locks, the broken systems, and the delays that allowed the cubs to be trapped in the first place. Every panel, every sensor, every report is scrutinized, but the alphas know the story that cannot be written in logs or files. The cubs are cared for, gently given food, blankets, warmth and attention, yet the adults cannot ignore the lesson she left behind. The world will ask questions about failure, but the truth that matters most is the choice she made to stay awake, to guide them to life. The alpha document the scene, not for blame alone, but for understanding, for training, for memory. They photograph marks on walls, scratches on the floor, and worn clothing, each detail a testament to endurance and selflessness. They take careful notes of the cubs' recollections, piecing together the timeline of courage that cannot be measured outside. The compartment authorities arrive, and questions are asked about protocols and responsibility, but the alphas answer sparingly, knowing that no bureaucracy can capture the depth of sacrifice. The cubs are shielded from it, all their safety and mental space protected while their bodies recover. Then, as officials speak of negligence, the alphas return silently to the threshold of the compartment, standing in shadows, observing where she fell and where life continued because she refused to leave. The air carries her presence as if the walls themselves remember every choice, every whisper, every heartbeat. They understand that heroes are not defined by titles or power, but by the willingness to act when others hesitate. That one person could hold back fear and exhaustion long enough to keep others alive is a lesson written not in paper but in breath and in life. And, as the world debates fault, the alphas carry a quiet truth that will not fade, that courage exists in silence, that sacrifice shapes futures, and that the cubs live because someone stayed behind. That alphas return to the compartment later, long after the cubs have been carried to safety. The night is quiet, the air still heavy with memory. As they stand at the threshold where courage and loss collided, they move slowly, tracing the marks on the walls and floor, hands hovering over scratches and stains that tell a story no one else can read. They remember the small bodies huddled together, the shallow breaths, the fear that filled the air, and the steady presence that held them through it all. Each alpha feels the weight of responsibility and the depth of sacrifice, knowing that leadership sometimes means standing in the shadow of loss rather than in the light of triumph. They speak little to each other, words unnecessary, as silence carries understanding. They kneel briefly to touch the floor, to acknowledge the life that was given to preserve others. They take photographs and notes, not for duty alone, but to remember, to teach, to honor. The compartment feels alive with echoes of her voice, stories whispered, and guidance given in the darkest hours. The alphas imagine the cubs counting breaths and listening for warmth as they once did, and they know that memory will live inside them forever, shaping choices, protecting innocence. One alpha lingers longer than the rest, staring at the place she fell, seeing courage etched in the faintest signs of struggle. The night hums softly around them, shadows stretching and receding, as if acknowledging the truth of what occurred. As they leave, they carry the story quietly between them, knowing it will follow into every mission, every decision, and every future rescue. The cubs live because someone stayed behind, and the alphas understand that some heroes are never celebrated, yet their impact is eternal. The door closes behind them, the compartment silent once more, but never empty, for the presence of sacrifice and life remains embedded in every corner, whispering the truth that courage is often unseen and love sometimes costs everything.